The red sun of Kepler 442b rose like a wound in the sky, its light spilling across jagged valleys and rust-colored plains. The mining colony lay small and fragile against the vastness of the alien world, a cluster of prefabricated domes and steel towers surrounded by nothing but barren stone. Dust storms often swept through the canyons, painting the sky in burning hues, but this morning the air was still, eerily still. Jake Morrison sipped the last of his bitter coffee, standing at the wide viewport of the command center. The brew had long gone cold, but out here, 600 light-years from Earth, you learn not to waste things. Every drop of water, every ounce of food, every cup of coffee mattered. Waste was death. He finished the drink with a grimace and set the cup aside, his reflection staring back at him in the reinforced glass. A weathered face, late 30s, lines carved by too many years of hard work and harder choices. He wasn't a soldier anymore. Wasn't a leader, not officially, just a miner. And that suited him fine, or so he told himself. The camp buzzed faintly with life. 23 souls had built this fragile outpost on the edge of nowhere, clawing rare metals from the soil to feed Earth's colonies. Out here they were far from shipping lanes, far from galactic council patrols, far from politics, just workers making a living. At least that was how Jake liked it. Quiet, predictable. The command center doors hissed open. Lisa Grant, chief engineer, stormed in holding a tablet, her coveralls streaked with grease. Her ponytail looked as tired as her eyes. She wasn't smiling. "Jake," she said, her voice low, urgent, "you need to see this." Jake turned, reading the look in her eyes before even glancing at the screen. Trouble, always trouble. "What is it?" he asked. She thrust the tablet into his hands. Scrolling data filled the display, energy readings, spiking in strange, jagged patterns, his brow furrowed. "What am I looking at?" "Impact signatures," Lisa replied. "Something came down in the northern canyon 6 hours ago, hard." Jake tapped through the analysis. The energy output was off the charts, nothing matched. Not council, not human, not any of the alien designs logged in their databanks. The readings bent the numbers in ways that made his head hurt. "Could be pirates," he muttered, "or smugglers running dark." Lisa shook her head. "No, I've seen pirate wrecks. This isn't like that. The structure of the signal, Jake, I've never seen anything like it." He stared at the tablet, a coil of unease tightening in his gut. Unidentified crashes out here weren't supposed to happen. The council kept strict flight records. Every route, every ship was cataloged. And yet, here it was, something that didn't belong. The door hissed again and Ryan Carter stepped in, their medical officer. He was quiet as usual, face unreadable, but he caught the tension immediately. "What's going on?" Lisa answered for Jake. "Crashed ship, Northern Canyon, not council, not human." Ryan frowned. "So what do we do?" Jake hesitated. The smart thing would be to report it, wait for council teams to handle it. That was procedure, that was safe. But the nearest council station was 3 days away. By then, anyone aboard that wreck could be long dead, and he knew what council protocol meant when it came to unknowns: containment, quarantine, dissection. Jake's jaw tightened. "Get Danny," he said finally. "We're taking the rover." An hour later, the 4 of them bounced across Kepler's jagged terrain in the heavy-duty rover. Jake drove, hands steady on the controls, eyes scanning the horizon. Lisa sat beside him, monitoring the tablet's readings. Ryan and Danny Lau, their youngest crew member, sat in the back, Ryan silent as always, Danny fidgeting with the portable comm unit strapped to his chest. "Signal's stronger," Lisa announced as they neared the canyon. Her voice carried a tension Jake rarely heard from her. "Whatever it is, it's still active." The rover crested a ridge, and the canyon spread before them, deep, jagged walls plunging into shadow. Jake killed the engine and climbed out. Wind howled faintly along the cliffs. The sun painted the rocks blood red, and halfway down the southern wall, wedged against a crumbling outcrop, was the wreck. Jake's breath caught. It wasn't like any ship he had seen in 15 years of running the space lanes. Not sleek human steel, not the curved, organic shapes of known alien craft. This vessel looked alive. A crystalline frame fused with tissue that pulsed faintly with inner light. Its fractured hull shimmered with colors that shifted as if breathing. "Holy," Danny whispered, "it's beautiful." Lisa scanned rapidly. 60 meters long, maybe 20 wide, section still active, and she paused, staring at the screen. "Jake, life signs." Ryan leaned forward instantly. "Alive." "Barely 2, maybe 3, weak." Jake's eyes locked on the jagged wound torn open in the hull, an entrance big enough for a human to crawl through. Something deep inside glowed with shifting blue-green light. He felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. Ryan's voice was quiet but steady. "If they're alive, I need to get to them now. Every minute counts." Jake nodded slowly. He turned to Danny. "Can you get comms through?" Danny fiddled with the unit, shook his head. "Canyon walls are blocking signal. We're on our own until we climb out." Jake exhaled through his nose. So be it. He looked once more at the impossible ship, then at his crew. Ryan's steady gaze, Lisa's clenched jaw, Danny's nervous but determined eyes. This was no longer a mining job. This was first contact. "All right," Jake said finally, pulling his rifle from the rover's rack, not to attack, but because habit demanded caution. "We go in together, stay close. No one wanders off, understood?" 3 heads nodded. Jake turned toward the shimmering wound in the alien hull. The air hummed faintly, vibrating in his bones, making his teeth ache. Something inside called to him, not in words, but in rhythm, like a heartbeat. He took a step forward, and from deep inside the alien wreck a sound answered. Not voice, not music, something in between. The universal translator clipped to his belt crackled to life. The broken signal spat fragments into the canyon air. "Help need dying." Jake froze, his pulse thundered. He glanced back at his crew. Ryan already had his medkit open. Lisa's scanner glowed. Danny's hands hovered over the comm, helpless to reach base. The ship pulsed again, light spilling from within like a living wound. Jake swallowed hard. "We're not walking away from this." He stepped inside. The moment Jake crossed the threshold of the alien vessel, the air changed. Warm, damp, heavy with a sweet metallic scent that clung to his tongue. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing with veins of blue and green light that seemed to react to their presence. Every step echoed strangely, as if the ship itself was listening. "Feels alive," Danny whispered behind him, voice trembling. Like we're inside a body." Lisa pressed her scanner against the wall, the screen lit with data that made no sense. "Organic crystalline lattice, energy patterns off the charts. This isn't built, it's grown." Jake ignored the rising unease in his stomach and pushed forward, rifle lowered but ready. The corridor twisted in ways that made no architectural sense, bending as though following the ship's own muscles. The hum in the air grew louder, vibrating against his chest like a second heartbeat. From deeper within a sound came, half cry, half song. The translator on Jake's belt sputtered, catching fragments. "Cold, lost, dying." Ryan gripped his medkit tighter. "That's not just distress, that's pain, real pain." Jake raised a hand. "Stay sharp, whatever we find, we keep our heads." They reached a wide chamber that could only be the bridge, though it looked nothing like any bridge Jake had seen. Arched crystal supports bent overhead, glowing faintly, while organic strands like tendons connected panels that pulsed with alien light. And on the floor, 3 bodies. Jake's chest tightened. The beings were long and thin, easily 3 meters tall if standing. Their translucent skin shimmered faintly with bioluminescent patterns that flickered like dying stars. Their torsos branched into multiple arms, each ending in delicate, many-fingered hands. Their heads were smooth, elongated, with enormous black eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once, even in stillness. One of them lay dark and motionless, dead. The other 2 flickered weakly, lights fatting in and out like fatting embers. Ryan was already kneeling beside them, medkit open, his hands steady even though sweat lined his brow. Their biology's alien, but some structures are familiar. Circulatory flow, respiratory rhythms, they're carbon-based. He looked up at Jake, urgency in his eyes. "I have to try." The translator stuttered to life again, the alien voices breaking into strained words. "We are people, star burns out, home cold, no place." Jake's stomach twisted. Refugees, that much was clear. Lisa scanned rapidly. "Jake, I think I know why they crashed. Power core destabilized. It's bleeding energy. They barely made it here before failing completely." Jake knelt, leaning close to one of the survivors. Its great eyes fluttered, focusing on him weakly. The bioluminescent patterns across its chest flickered faster, forming pulses like language. The translator caught more this time. "You help us, others turn away." "Who?" Jake asked softly. "Who turned you away?" The being's light dimmed, its words breaking with weakness. Council say not compatible. Federation call us anomaly. Union refuse entry. All refuse, all turn away. Jake froze, cold creeping into his chest. The Galactic Council, the supposed protectors of order, had already condemned them, left them to die. Ryan swore under his breath. Their vitals are crashing. Jake, I need supplies from the rover. Oxygen tanks, IV fluids, anything with electrolytes. Jake nodded to Danny. Go fast as you can. Danny bolted back down the corridor, footsteps echoing against the pulsing walls. Lisa looked from the fatting aliens to Jake. We shouldn't be doing this. You know what the council will say. Protocol says report and contain. Jake's jaw clenched. Protocol doesn't matter, they'll kill them. Ryan looked up, face pale. Without treatment, they're dead in hours. Jake stared at the fragile beings before him. His mining colony wasn't a fortress. It wasn't a hospital. They had no authority, no protection. Harboring unknown aliens could doom them all. But in the face of those dying eyes, glowing faintly with pleading light, he knew the choice was already made. They stay with us, Jake said finally. We'll help them. Hours later, the survivors were moved to the colony's medical bay. Ryan worked tirelessly, adjusting human equipment to fit alien bodies, improvising with cables, tubing, even mining filters to create something resembling a life support system. The beings called themselves Valor. The male's name was Kale, the female, Nara. Their voices were broken, their translator struggling, but across days of recovery, Jake pieced together their story. The Valor had lived near a dying star, their entire species scattered across the galaxy in crystalline organic ships like the one that had crashed. They had begged for sanctuary from the great powers. One by one, they had been refused. Incompatible, anomaly, dangerous, useless. Now their people wandered as nomads, scattered and dying, hunted more often than helped. Kale's voice was weak but steady one evening as he pulsed light across his chest. The translator softened it into words. We ask for place. All doors close. All say no. You say yes. Jake sat at his bedside, silent for a long moment. He wasn't a diplomat, wasn't a politician, just a man who had chosen compassion. But he also knew the cost. That night, Jake called a meeting with his core crew. Lisa, Ryan, and Danny sat around the small steel table in the colony's conference room. The walls hummed with the sound of generators. The air felt heavy with unspoken tension. We need to talk about what happens next, Jake began. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. The Valor aren't just strangers, they're refugees, and they're not the only ones out there. Lisa crossed her arms. You're saying we keep them, hide them, that's treason, Jake. Ryan shook his head. It's life or death. If we hand them over, they're gone. You've seen how the council treats anomalies. Danny bit his lip. What if the council finds out? They'll shut us down, maybe worse. Jake met each of their eyes in turn. The council already turned them away. Every species they asked turned them away. But we didn't. We can't. We're human. We don't leave people to die. Silence stretched across the room, broken only by the low rumble of the life support systems. Finally, Lisa sighed. Then we better be ready for whatever comes next, because the council isn't going to forgive this. Before Jake could answer, Danny's comm board lit up with a sharp beep. He frowned, tapping it. Jake, incoming transmission, but it's not Earth, and it's not Council. Jake's blood went cold. Put it through. The screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was not human, not Valor, not anything Jake had seen in the databanks. The being's body was carved from dark stone, glowing cracks running through it like molten veins. Its eyes burned faintly like embers deep within. Its voice was a deep grind like rock shifting in the earth. Human vessel, we hear you shelter the crystal singers, is this true? Jake froze. Crystal singers, that must have been what others called the Valor. He steadied his voice. Who are you? The stone figure leaned closer, its ember eyes unblinking. We are Kron. We too were cast aside. Our world burned, our creators dead. Others said we were machines not alive. They turned away, but we endure. And now we hear whispers in the dark that humans do not turn away. The screen flickered. The Kron's voice rumbled like thunder. We come to see if the whispers are true. The Kron ship descended 2 days later. It looked nothing like the Valor vessel, no shimmering crystal or glowing tissue. This one was raw stone, a jagged monolith carved into the shape of a vessel, as if someone had hollowed out an asteroid and given it engines. When it touched down on the rocky plain outside the colony, the ground trembled under its immense weight. The colonists gathered near the landing site, whispering nervously. 23 people, miners and technicians, stood side by side with two fragile Veiler refugees who still struggled to walk. They all stared at the massive stone craft. Jake stood at the front, rifle strapped to his shoulder, though he prayed he wouldn't need it. Lisa hovered beside him, eyes fixed on the ship with a mixture of awe and dread. Ryan carried his medkit. Danny clutched his comm unit like it was a lifeline. The Kron ship's surface cracked open with a grinding sound, and 6 figures emerged. They were giants, 4 meters tall, each weighed several tons. Their bodies were slabs of living stone streaked with glowing magma-like veins. They moved slowly but deliberately, each step shaking the earth. The one in the lead had a face chiseled into harsh, angular lines, his eyes burning faintly with ember light. He raised a massive hand and spoke in a voice that rumbled like a landslide. "We are Kron, we seek sanctuary." Silence fell across the crowd. The air felt heavy, charged with the enormity of the moment. Jake swallowed and stepped forward. His voice came steady, even though his heart pounded. "I'm Jake Morrison. This is our colony. Why come here?" The giant lowered his head slightly, a gesture that almost seemed respectful. "We were made long ago by those who called themselves our creators. They built us to mine their worlds. But when their son died and they perished, we remained. We learned. We endured. Others called us machines, not alive. They said stone cannot think. They feared us, and they turned away." His ember eyes burned brighter as he spoke. "For 7 years we wandered. No home, no welcome. Then we heard whispers that humans had sheltered the crystal singers, that humans did not turn away. We came to see if this was true." Jake glanced at Kale and Nara, who stood watching from the side. Their faint bioluminescent patterns pulsed quickly, as if echoing their own memory of rejection. The parallel was undeniable. Lisa whispered, "Jake, if we take them in, there's no going back. We'll be breaking every law in the Council's book." Jake looked up at the towering stone giant before him, then at the faces of his small crew, and finally at the Veiler, their fragile bodies glowing faintly with hope. He thought of his own life. The Council had labeled him a failure once, too. A washed-up soldier, too stubborn to follow orders, too human to fit into their neat little system. He took a deep breath. "The whispers are true. You're welcome here." The Kron settled in quickly, though settled was hardly the word. Their sheer size and strength made them invaluable almost immediately. Where human machines struggled against Kepler's dense rock, the Kron carved tunnels with their bare hands, moving boulders like toys. Within a week, they had doubled the colony's storage capacity. The other colonists, wary at first, grew to admire them. One Kron in particular, the leader who called himself Granite, became a regular presence in the command center. He stood silent most of the time, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. Lisa marveled at their design. They're not machines. Their bodies are crystalline silicate matrices with quantum resonance. They think in ways we can't even imagine. Ryan found his medical work tested again. They don't bleed, they fracture, but they heal slowly by fusing their mineral structures back together. I've never seen anything like it. Kale and Nara watched the Kron with fascination. Despite their differences, they recognized each other as kin in rejection. The Veiler's light patterns often pulsed in rhythm with the Kron's ember veins, as if some unspoken bond connected them. For the first time, Jake realized his colony was no longer just a mining camp. It was becoming something else entirely. The transformation didn't go unnoticed. One evening, as Jake reviewed supply logs in the command center, Danny burst in, pale and shaking. "Jake, you need to see this." He slammed the comm screen on. An incoming message flickered to life, not from Earth, not from the Council, but from deep space. The face that appeared was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It was a being of pure light. No body, no solid form, just a shifting silhouette of energy contained in a faint electromagnetic field. Sparks crackled where its outline touched the edges of the transmission. Its voice came as a harmonic vibration, like music turned into words. The translator struggled but managed. "We are Nethys, born of accident. Terraforming fire created us 50 years past. Others called us anomaly, dangerous, not alive. They turned away. But we survive. We hear humans shelter the cast-off. We ask, is it true?" Jake froze, heart hammering. Another one. Another species abandoned, another story of rejection. The screen flickered again, splitting into multiple feeds. Other faces appeared, some humanoid, some not. A slender being cloaked in shadows, its form absorbing the very light around it. A group of small, fragile creatures with large, sorrowful eyes. A tall figure with wings of translucent membranes. Each voice carried the same plea, broken by static but clear enough. Turned away. No home. Humans help. Jake felt the weight pressing down on his shoulders. His small crew had saved 2 refugees, then 6 more. Now entire species were calling out to them. Word had spread faster than he could have imagined. Lisa's voice was sharp with alarm. Jake, if we answer them, we're declaring open rebellion. The Council will never forgive this. Ryan's tone was quieter but firm. If we don't, they die, that's the choice. Danny's eyes were wide, hands shaking. We're miners, not politicians. We can't lead a refugee camp. Jake stood slowly, staring at the calm screen filled with desperate faces. He remembered Kale's weak voice, Nara's trembling light. He remembered Granite's ember eyes filled with hope after years of wandering, and he knew the truth. He was no longer just a miner. He turned to his crew. We tell them the truth, that the whispers are true, that they have a place here. The following days blurred into chaos. Refugee ships began arriving, one after another. Broken vessels limped into orbit carrying species that had been turned away at every border. The Nethys, beings of energy, who flickered and hummed like living lightning. The Zephyrians, pacifists exiled for refusing to fight in their world's endless wars. The Umbriel, shadow beings whose presence unsettled others because they absorbed radiation instead of emitting light. Each ship carried the same story: rejection, abandonment, survival. And each time Jake found himself saying the same words. You're safe here. The colony expanded rapidly. The Kron carved new halls from the stone. The Veiler grew crystalline power conduits that pulsed with clean, renewable energy. The Nethys repaired failing electronics with their own bodies. The Zephyrians taught mediation, helping species communicate despite fear. What had once been a mining camp was becoming something entirely new, a sanctuary. And with every ship that arrived, Jake's sense of dread grew heavier. Because sooner or later the Galactic Council would notice, and when they did, they would come. That night, Jake stood alone on the canyon ridge where he had first seen the Veiler wreck. The stars shimmered overhead, cold and indifferent. Behind him, the colony lights burned brighter than ever, a patchwork of species working side by side. Footsteps approached. Granite's massive frame appeared, his ember eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The Kron stood beside Jake in silence for a long time, watching the stars. Finally, Granite rumbled, "You fear what comes." Jake exhaled slowly. The Council won't let this stand. They'll call it illegal, dangerous, treason. Granite's gaze stayed fixed on the sky. And yet you do it. Why? Jake looked back at the colony, at the fragile lights flickering in the alien night. Because someone has to. Granite nodded slowly, his stone face unreadable. Then we stand with you. The words were simple, but in them, Jake felt the beginning of something far larger than his little colony. Back in the command center, Danny's board lit up again. Another transmission. Lisa's voice was tense. Please, God, not another refugee ship. But when the screen flickered on, it wasn't a refugee. It was the Galactic Council. A tall figure with silver skin and piercing blue eyes appeared, flanked by symbols of authority. His voice carried the weight of law and condemnation. Human colony on Kepler 442b, you are hereby ordered to surrender all non-human inhabitants into Council custody. You are in violation of interstellar law. Failure to comply will result in immediate action. Jake's blood ran cold. The Council had found them. The command center went silent after the Council transmission. The silver-skinned envoy's words lingered like a curse in the air. Surrender all non-human inhabitants into Council custody, or face immediate action. Jake stared at the flickering screen long after it went dark. His stomach churned with a cold knot. He had known this day would come, but hearing the words made the threat real. Lisa broke the silence first, her voice sharp. That's it, we're finished. If we defy them, they'll wipe us out. One cruiser could flatten this colony in minutes. Ryan folded his arms, quiet but firm. And if we obey, Kale and Nara die. Granite and his people die. The Nethys, the Umbriel, the Zephyrians, every refugee we've taken in, They're as good as dead the moment we hand them over. Lisa shot him a look. You don't know that? Yes, I do, Ryan said, voice tight. You've seen the way they treat anomalies, quarantine, experiments, disposal. You think the council going to rehabilitate them? No, they'll erase them. That's what they've always done. Danny's hands trembled as he fiddled with his comm unit. Jake, what do we do? Jake finally turned away from the screen. His eyes met each of theirs in turn, heavy with resolve. We don't hand them over, we stand. Lisa's face flushed with disbelief. Stand? Against the council? Jake, we've got 23 miners and a handful of refugees who barely know how to breathe in our atmosphere. The council has fleets. We're not soldiers, Jake admitted. But we're human, we adapt, we improvise, and we don't abandon those who trusted us. The words hung in the air. Lisa wanted to argue, but she didn't. Ryan gave a single slow nod. Danny looked terrified, but he didn't leave. Jake drew in a long breath. Then it's decided, we prepare. The next day, the council blockade arrived. 12 sleek enforcement cruisers dropped out of hyperspace above Kepler 442b, forming a wall of steel and firepower in orbit. Their presence blotted out the stars, an unmistakable display of dominance. The colony's sensors lit up with warnings as the cruisers scanned and triangulated every signal. The council sent one more message, broadcast across all frequencies. This is your final warning. Surrender the unauthorized refugees immediately or face termination. Jake played the message to the colony's inhabitants, humans, Vaylor, Kron, Nethys, Zephyrians, Umbriel. Dozens of frightened faces stared at him from the gathering hall. Some glowed with light, some burned with ember veins, some flickered like shadows, but all were desperate, all were waiting. Jake stood before them, his voice steady. You all heard the threat. The council wants you gone, they want you erased. But here you are alive, and I won't hand you over, not now, not ever. The room rippled with murmurs. Kale's body glowed faintly as he spoke, the translator translating his harmonic tones. You stand with us. Why? You risk death for not your kind. Jake met the alien's glowing eyes. Because compassion isn't about kind, it's about choice, and I choose to stand with you. Granite rumbled, his voice like thunder rolling through stone. Then the Kron stand with you also, to the end. A low hum filled the room as the Nethys pulsed in agreement. The Zephyrians bowed their heads solemnly. Even the Umbriel shimmered faintly, their shadow-like bodies whispering words the translator struggled to catch. Together, preparation began immediately. Lisa oversaw the construction of defenses, her hands black with grease as she modified mining equipment into makeshift weapons. Plasma cutters became turrets. Ore drills were fitted with energy capacitors. With Vaylor assistance, their crystalline power sources hummed with new efficiency, feeding shields that shimmered faintly around the colony. Granite and the Kron dug deeper tunnels, carving vast shelters into the canyon walls. Their strength turned bare stone into fortresses. The Nethys, beings of energy, interfaced directly with human systems, creating feedback loops that scrambled council scans. They will see only static, one hummed, their voice echoing like a symphony in the wires. The Umbriel cloaked entire sections of the colony in shadow, bending radiation signatures so that council sensors read only empty space. For the first time in history, beings the galaxy had cast aside worked side by side, each gift, each uniqueness turning into strength. And yet Jake knew it might not be enough. 3 nights later, the council fleet moved. Alarms blared across the colony as sensors picked up dropships leaving orbit. Sleek gunships descended through the atmosphere, engines roaring, weapons primed. Jake rushed into the command center, Lisa and Danny at his side. The screen lit up with red markers. They're sending a boarding party, Lisa reported, voice taut. Small, surgical strike. They want to take the refugees alive. Or make an example of us, Jake muttered. He slammed the comm system open. All units, council forces incoming, non-combatants to shelters, defense teams hold the line. Through the viewport, streaks of fire cut across the red sky as council dropships descended. Dust storms kicked up around the landing sites. Ryan's voice crackled over the comm. Jake, we've got injured refugees who can't be moved. I need time. You'll get it, Jake replied. The dropship slammed down on the canyon floor, hatches opening. Armored council troopers poured out, sleek armor, plasma rifles, disciplined formation. They moved like machines, efficient and merciless. Jake grabbed his rifle and turned to Lisa and Danny. This is it. No turning back. Lisa cocked her plasma cutter, lips tight. Show them what miners can do. The first clash came at the southern ridge. Council troopers advanced in precise formation, but they didn't expect what waited. Granite and two other Kron emerged from the canyon walls themselves, their stone bodies blending perfectly with the rock. With a roar that shook the earth, Granite slammed into the troopers, scattering them like toys. Energy bolts sparked harmlessly against his mineral hide as he swung massive arms, crushing rifles like twigs. From the ridgeline above, human colonists opened fire with modified drills and cutters, blasting jets of plasma into enemy ranks. The Veiler pulsed with brilliant light, overloading the Council's targeting systems. The troopers stumbled, blinded by shimmering waves. The Umbriel slid silently across the battlefield, their shadowy forms bending radiation, making soldiers fire at phantoms. Still, the Council was relentless. For every trooper that fell, two more advanced. Their discipline was iron. Their weapons cut down one Kron with concentrated fire, the giant collapsing with a roar that echoed through the canyon. Jake fired from cover, heart hammering, ears ringing with plasma bursts. For every enemy that fell, he thought of Ryan trying to keep wounded refugees alive. For every second they held, lives were saved. But the Council pressed closer. Lisa shouted over the din, "They're pushing through, we can't hold much longer." Jake's comm crackled, Danny's panicked voice screamed through. "Jake, they've got air support inbound, gunships, 2 of them." Jake's blood ran cold. Dropships were bad enough, but gunships would tear the colony apart. He looked up, eyes catching the faint shimmer of shields overhead, powered by Veiler tech. They wouldn't last long against concentrated fire. "Lisa," he shouted, desperation sharpening his tone. "Tell me you've got something." Her eyes narrowed. "Maybe, but it's insane." "Insane's all we've got." She slammed her palm against the console, activating the failsafe she'd been working on in secret. From deep within the colony, the generators roared to life, Veiler crystal harmonics surging through human machinery. A massive pulse of energy burst skyward, a shimmering wave of light that rolled across the sky. The gunships screamed as their systems went haywire, their engines sputtering, weapons locking. One spiraled out of control and slammed into the canyon wall in a fireball. The other pulled up hard, retreating. On the ground, Council troopers staggered, their armor sparking, comms fried by the pulse. The tide turned in an instant. Kron slammed into the disoriented soldiers. Nethys flooded their weapons with surges of energy, frying circuits. Humans advanced, driving the enemy back toward their dropships. The Council force broke. Retreat alarms blared as survivors scrambled back aboard their transports, ships lifting off in disarray. The battlefield fell silent. Smoke drifted through the canyon. Bodies, human, alien, Council, lay scattered in the dust. Jake stood amidst it all, chest heaving, rifle smoking in his hands. His heart thundered with the enormity of what had just happened. They had won. A small mining colony had defeated the Galactic Council's enforcers. But even as the survivors cheered, Jake's stomach twisted, because he knew what would come next. The Council wouldn't forgive this. They would come back with everything. Smoke still lingered in the canyon the morning after the battle. The ground was black with scorched stone, wreckage scattered like broken bones. Human miners walked among the ruins, stunned that they were still alive. The Kron moved silently, lifting shattered Council armor and piling it into heaps. The Veiler pulsed faint light, mourning in silence. Jake stood on the ridge, his body aching, his mind heavier than ever. They had won. Against all odds, they had driven the Council back, but victory tasted like ash in his mouth. Because he knew this wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The Council would not let a mining colony humiliate their enforcers. They would come back with fleets. They would erase Kepler 442b from every star map. And yet, even knowing that, Jake couldn't find regret. He looked at Kale and Nara, their fragile lights glowing faintly as they helped move the wounded. He looked at Granite, who stood scarred but unbowed, his ember eyes still burning. He looked at the children, human and alien, playing together in the dust, too innocent to understand the storm closing in. For the first time in his life, Jake felt certain. He was exactly where he was meant to be. News traveled faster than ships. Within a week, whispers of the battle spread across human space. A colony had defied the council. A mining outpost had sheltered the unwanted. Refugees were finding safety where no one else would take them. The whispers turned into something else: action. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, a freighter captain named Sam Henderson made his choice. He stood in the cargo bay of his vessel, watching 20 Umbriel refugees huddle in the shadows. They had escaped a council raid and had nowhere else to go. His first officer, Tony Walsh, frowned. "Sam, you know what this means. If we take them to Kepler, we're outlaws." Sam looked at the shadowy figures, their faint whispers brushing against his thoughts like wind. He thought of the news reports of Jake Morrison's stand, and he nodded. "Then we're outlaws, plot course to Kepler." On Mars, Dr. Amanda Foster resigned from her prestigious research post at the Institute for Galactic Studies. Her resignation speech was broadcast across underground networks. "The greatest humanitarian crisis in galactic history is unfolding before us. Humanity's duty is clear. If the Council will not act, then we must." On colony worlds, merchant ships began disappearing from trade routes, not because of piracy, but because their captains had chosen to divert smuggling refugees to hidden havens. The underground network was born. Back on Kepler 442b, the colony struggled to keep up. Refugee ships arrived almost daily now, battered and limping, their passengers desperate. The Umbriel brought their shadowy calm. The Zephyrians sang gentle songs of peace. The Nethys flickered with energy, lighting entire corridors with their glow. Every new arrival stretched resources thinner. Food supplies dwindled, power systems strained. The shelters were crowded, filled with voices in a dozen languages. Lisa stood in the command center, hair tied back, grease smeared on her face as she pointed at supply charts. "Jake, this won't hold. We've got maybe 3 weeks before rationing hits crisis levels, and if the Council cuts us off completely, we're done." Jake rubbed his temples. "We'll find a way, we always do." Granite rumbled from the corner. "Kron will dig deeper, find ore, build storage, we endure." Kale's faint voice added, "Valor grow power systems, stronger, cleaner, enough for all." Ryan leaned on the table, his face pale with exhaustion. "Medical bay is at capacity, but I'll keep going, they need us." Lisa threw her hands up. "We're not a colony anymore, we're a city, and cities need governments, leaders, armies, things we don't have." Jake met her eyes. "We'll build them together." The Council made its move faster than expected. A month after the battle, transmissions blared across human space. The silver-skinned ambassador Velarin appeared on every channel, his cold eyes burning with authority. "The human colony on Kepler 442b has defied the law. They harbor anomalies. They endanger the balance of the galaxy. Effective immediately, all human space is under blockade. No trade, no communication, no exceptions." On Earth, President Maria Santos stood in her office, surrounded by panicked advisors. Trade routes were collapsing. Colonies screamed for supplies. Shipping corporations canceled contracts. Prices soared overnight. "This is a disaster," muttered Paul Wright, the economic minister. "We've got 6 months before colonies starve." Defense Secretary Hayes added grimly, "If the Council enforces the blockade with fleets, we can't protect everyone. Our navy's spread too thin." President Santos turned to her foreign minister. "Can we order Morrison to comply, to hand the refugees over?" Kevin Clark shook his head. "Communications with Kepler are already blocked, and even if we reached him, Jake Morrison isn't the type to bend." Santos closed her eyes. Humanity had been in the Council for 30 years, always a minor voice, tolerated but never respected. Now they were alone, cut off, punished for compassion. But compassion is contagious. Across human space, defiance spread. Captain Bate Morgan, an explorer, turned her vessel into a lifeline, ferrying Zephyrians whose transport had been destroyed. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera abandoned his patrol route, setting up hidden comm relays for refugee ships. Scientists, engineers, ordinary colonists. One by one, they chose to resist. They called it the Sanctuary Movement. And Kepler 442b became its heart. In the colony's medical bay, Ryan discovered something that chilled him. He pored over the genetic data of their refugees, Valor, Kron, Nethys, Umbriel, Zephyrians. Patterns began to emerge. strange similarities across wildly different species. Each represented evolutionary paths that challenged established norms. Crystal consciousness, living stone, energy beings, shadow forms, pacifism. He presented his findings to Jake, Lisa, and Alina Rodriguez, the xenobiologist who had joined them after hearing rumors. "It's not random," Ryan said, voice shaking. "These species were excluded for a reason. They represent possibilities the Council doesn't want. Innovation, change. They threaten the old order." Alina nodded grimly. "I've studied the Council's history. This has happened before. Species that develop too fast, too different, they vanished. Not accidents, not bad luck. Erased." Jake stared at the data, his gut turning cold. "You're saying the Council's been shaping evolution, keeping the galaxy stagnant?" Ryan met his eyes. "Yes, and by helping these refugees, we've started something much bigger than charity. This isn't just survival, it's revolution." That night, Jake stood in the canyon where he had first found Kale and Nara, the Valor refugees who had changed everything. The red sun was setting, casting long shadows over the rock. He remembered the Council's ultimatum, the blockade, the battle they had just fought. And he remembered the faces of those who had arrived since, beings who had lost everything, yet found hope here. Granite approached, massive and silent, and stood beside him. The Kron's ember eyes glowed faintly. "They will come again," Granite rumbled. "Yes," Jake said. His voice was low, steady. "And next time it won't just be soldiers, they'll bring fleets, weapons built to erase us." Granite tilted his stone head. "Then we will endure. We are stone. We break, but we do not vanish." Jake exhaled slowly, staring into the dying light of the red sun. "We'll endure, but not by hiding. Next time we fight on our terms." The alarm screamed. Danny rushed into the command center, his face pale. "Jake, they're here. Council fleet. Big one, 12 cruisers, 20 escorts coming straight for us." Lisa's face drained of color. "After what we did last time, they won't stop at threats. They'll burn us to ash." Jake's jaw clenched. He looked at the screens filled with red markers, at the colony filled with refugees, at his weary crew who had followed him this far. He had made his choice weeks ago. "Then we fight," he said. The sky above Kepler 442b tore open with fire. 12 Council cruisers and 20 escorts descended from orbit in tight formation, their sleek hulls gleaming silver in the light of the red sun. The air shook as atmospheric entry burned across the horizon. Sirens screamed in the colony. Refugees crowded into shelters carved by the Kron. Children cried. The air was thick with fear. Jake stood in the command center, his jaw set like stone. Lisa sat at the tactical console, fingers racing over controls. Danny manned the comms, pale but focused. Granite loomed in the corner, unmoving, a silent sentinel. Kale and Nara stood together, their faint bioluminescence pulsing quickly, like frightened heartbeats. "Council fleet moving into bombardment pattern," Lisa reported, voice taut. "If they open fire, we're done." Jake's voice was calm, steadier than he felt. "They won't, not yet. They want the refugees alive. They'll try to take us clean." "Clean?" Lisa shot him a sharp look. "There's nothing clean about what's coming." Jake didn't argue. His gut told him the truth. This was it. No more skirmishes, no more warnings. This was the hammer. The Council envoy's face filled the main screen once more. Velarin's silver skin shimmered under Council lights, his blue eyes as cold as ice. "Human colony, you have been warned. This is your last chance. Surrender the anomalies. If you resist, you will be destroyed." Jake leaned forward, every word deliberate. "We're not surrendering, not now, not ever." Velarin's expression didn't change. "Then you leave us no choice." The transmission cut. The battle began. Council escorts screamed downward, unleashing swarms of drones that poured into the canyons like a black tide. Plasma fire rained against the colony's shields, which shimmered faintly with Valor crystal energy. "Shields holding," Lisa shouted, "but they won't last long." Jake grabbed his rifle and turned to the room. "Everyone to positions. Granite, take your warriors to the southern ridge. Kale, Nara, feed all power you can into the shields. Danny, keep the underground net linked. No silence. We fight together or not at all." The command center erupted into motion. On the canyon floor, Granite and his Kron slammed into the drone swarms. The ground shook with every strike of their massive arms, crushing machines like brittle toys. Energy fire scorched their stone hides, but they endured, roaring defiance with every blow. Above them, human gunners unleashed torrents of plasma from converted drills and cutters. Sparks filled the air. The Veiler sang through their crystalline bodies, pulsing harmonics into the shields. The barriers shimmered like living light, deflecting blast after blast. Nethys flowed directly into Council weapons, their energy bodies surging into circuits, frying systems from within. Enemy drones convulsed and fell lifeless. The Umbriel drifted across the battlefield as living shadows. Radiation bent around them, confusing targeting systems, causing Council soldiers to fire on phantoms. Still, the Council pressed forward. Their discipline was unbroken, their numbers overwhelming. In the command center, Danny's console flared red. "Jake, we've got reinforcements inbound," his voice broke. "But not Council, human ships, a lot of them." The screen lit with transponder codes. Dozens of civilian vessels, freighters, explorers, patrol craft, armed miners. Lisa's eyes widened, the sanctuary movement. The comm burst alive with voices. Captain Sam Henderson's voice came first. "This is the freighter Liberty. We're with you, Kepler." Another cut in. "Exploration vessel Ardent, weapons hot. You don't stand alone." More and more followed. 50 ships, 100, 200, ordinary humans who had chosen to defy the Council. Jake's throat tightened. He opened the comm. "Kepler thanks you. Let's show them what compassion looks like when it fights back." The sky turned into chaos. Human ships surged into the Council formation, their smaller, less advanced craft shielded with Veiler quantum harmonics and Umbriel cloaking. Kron-strengthened hulls withstood blasts that should have torn them apart. Nethys energy surged through their reactors, giving them impossible bursts of speed. Council warships faltered. Their sleek formations shattered as refugee-powered ships moved in patterns they couldn't predict. In the canyon, Jake fought alongside miners and refugees. Plasma bolts seared the air. Stone cracked. Machines screamed. Every second felt like eternity. Ryan's voice came through the comm, strained with urgency. "Medical bays overflowing, Jake. If we don't hold, it's over." "We hold," Jake grunted, firing another blast into a drone's core. "We don't break." Then the Council unveiled their new weapon. From the flagship in orbit, energy spiked. Lisa's console screamed warnings. "Jake, they're charging something, massive power signature, bigger than anything I've seen." On the screen, the weapon fired. A beam of white energy lanced from orbit into the canyon, tearing through shields, burning stone into molten rivers. Entire defensive lines disintegrated. Dozens of humans and refugees died in an instant. The weapon pulsed again, tearing closer to the colony heart. Panic surged across the comms. Voices screamed, "They're burning us alive." Jake stared at the screen, horror turning to fury. His hands clenched the console until his knuckles whitened. "They mean to wipe us out." Kale's faint light flickered beside him, desperate. "We can stop, but cost great." "What do you mean?" Jake demanded. Nara's glow pulsed weakly. "Veiler crystal resonance can disrupt Council weapon, but drains us, all light, no return." Jake froze. They were offering to burn themselves out, to die, to save everyone else. His throat tightened. "No, I won't let you do that." Granite's voice rumbled over the comm. "You must, or I'll fall." Lisa's eyes shone with tears, but her voice was steady. "Jake, if we don't stop that weapon, there won't be anyone left to save." Jake's chest heaved. His heart screamed no, but he saw the truth. Kale and Nara's eyes glowed softly, filled not with fear but with quiet resolve. They had been cast aside by the galaxy, abandoned by every power. But here they could choose. Jake swallowed hard. "Then we do it together, you won't die alone." The Veiler gathered in the canyon, their crystalline bodies pulsing with growing intensity. They linked their harmonics with the colony's generators, feeding impossible energy into the shields. The air thrummed like a symphony of light. Kale looked once at Jake, his glow soft but steady. "Thank you for seeing us." Then the resonance peaked. A wave of light exploded upward, striking the Council's orbital weapon. The beam fractured, bent, tore apart in a cascade of shimmering shards. The sky itself seemed to scream as the weapon imploded, taking 2 Council cruisers with it. The battlefield froze. When the light faded, Kale and Nara were gone. Nothing remained but faint, dying sparks drifting in the air. Jake fell to his knees, his body shaking, his vision blurred with grief. They had saved everyone, but at the cost of everything. Above, the Council fleet faltered. Their weapon destroyed, their formation broken, their escorts scattered by the Sanctuary fleet, the momentum shifted. Human and refugee ships surged forward. Kron slammed boarding pods into cruisers, tearing them open from within. Nethys flooded reactors, shutting down entire warships. Umbriel cloaked human ships until they struck like ghosts. For the first time, the Council fleet wavered. Retreat signals flared. Ships began pulling back. Velarin's voice screamed across the comms, furious. "This is not over. You doom the galaxy with your chaos." Jake rose slowly, his body trembling, his voice raw with rage and grief. "Without freedom, there is no galaxy worth saving." Velarin's face twisted, then his feed cut as the Council flagship fled. The battle was over. The field was silent, smoke drifted. The ground was littered with wreckage, but the colony still stood. Cheers erupted across the comms. Humans and refugees alike roared in victory. Granite's voice rumbled like thunder. "We endure." But Jake felt no triumph. He looked at the empty space where Kale and Nera had stood, his heart hollow. They had given everything. And the Council would return, stronger. This was only the beginning. The fires burned for 3 days. Columns of black smoke twisted into the red skies above Kepler 442b. Council wreckage smoldered in the canyons, twisted metal jutting out like broken teeth. The colony was alive, but scarred, stone cracked, shelters shattered, blood and ash staining the ground. Jake walked among the ruins, silent. His boots crunched over fragments of Council armor, over the crystalline shards that had once been Kale and Nera. Every step was heavy. His people had survived, but the cost was written on every face. Children asked where Kale was, where Nera was. Jake had no words. At night, the canyon was silent except for the low hum of Valar crystals, still glowing faintly where the 2 refugees had sacrificed themselves. Their last song lingered in the air, like an echo of hope that refused to fade. Jake stood there every night, listening, remembering. The victory could not be hidden. Across human space, news spread like wildfire. Kepler 442b had stood against the Council's fleet, and won. A mining colony had done the impossible, fighting side by side with species the galaxy had abandoned. The effect was explosive. On industrial worlds, workers walked off jobs, demanding their governments explain why refugees had been cast aside. In the Andorian Republic, one of the Council's long-standing members, crowds filled the streets chanting, "No more lies, no more exclusions." The Free Traders Guild declared the blockade illegal, pledging open support for sanctuary routes. Even within Council territories, whispers grew louder. Officers questioned orders. Colonists smuggled food and supplies to hidden havens. Young citizens of alien empires protested in the streets, demanding to know why their leaders had supported genocide. The Council's grip was slipping, and all eyes turned to Kepler 442b. The colony was no longer a colony, it was a city. Ships arrived daily, carrying not just refugees but volunteers. Human engineers, doctors, teachers, alien builders, healers, scientists. The Kron expanded the canyon into a sprawling complex of tunnels and hangars. Nethys flooded systems with energy, powering new stations. Umbriel cloaked entire sectors, hiding them from enemy scans. Elena Rodriguez established research halls where humans worked beside Valar remnants, Kron engineers, and Nethys harmonics. Breakthroughs came weekly: medicine, physics, energy systems. The pace of discovery was staggering, accelerated by perspectives the galaxy had once called anomalies. Lisa oversaw defense, integrating every scrap of alien knowledge into human ingenuity. New shields, hybrid weapons, cloaking systems that outstripped anything the Council had built in centuries. Ryan expanded the medical bay into a hospital. Refugees filled its beds, but for the first time they had hope. The sanctuary was no longer survival, it was progress. And Jake found himself something he had never wanted, never asked for: leadership. The first assembly convened in the canyon's largest hall. Hundreds gathered: humans, Kron, Nethys, Zephyrians, Umbriel, more species whose names the galaxy had forgotten. Each had a seat, each had a voice. Jake stood at the center, nervous despite everything he had faced. He was no diplomat, no politician, just a man who had refused to walk away from dying strangers, but the eyes of the galaxy were on him. His voice carried across the chamber. We began as miners. We had no plan, no power. All we had was a choice to turn away or to help. We chose compassion, and that choice changed everything. He let the words settle before continuing. The Council says you are anomalies, errors, things to be erased. I say you are people. I say you are the future. Together we are stronger than they ever imagined. And if the Council wants to call this rebellion, then so be it. Let them call us outlaws. Let them call us dangerous. We will call ourselves free. The hall thundered with voices. Stone roars, harmonic songs, shadow whispers, human cheers. The alliance of the rejected was born. The Council struck back with propaganda. Velarin appeared on every sanctioned channel, his silver skin gleaming, his voice venomous. Humanity has doomed the galaxy to chaos. They harbor dangerous anomalies. They spread disorder. They threaten peace itself. But the words rang hollow. For the first time in centuries, cracks spread through the Council's armor of authority. Species began to question, to resist. The blockade wavered as traders ignored orders. Patrol ships defected. Entire colonies declared independence. The galaxy was shifting, and at its heart burned the fire of Kepler 442b. But even in victory, danger loomed. Ryan discovered more patterns in refugee genetics. Species excluded weren't random, they represented potential revolutions. Communication, energy, biology, even philosophy. The Council hadn't just feared them, they had culled them for centuries. Thousands of species erased before they could flourish. Alina's voice shook as she presented the findings. The Council isn't maintaining peace. They're maintaining stagnation. They've strangled evolution itself to keep control. Jake's jaw clenched. He thought of Kale and Nara, who had given everything to stop the Council's weapon. He thought of Granite, who had endured centuries of rejection. He thought of children, human and alien, laughing together in the canyon, building something new. They can't stop this anymore, Jake said, voice steady. They tried to bury the future, but the future's already here. The Council gathered their largest fleet in galactic history, 300 warships, weapons built to shatter stars. Velarin commanded them personally, vowing to crush the sanctuary once and for all. But when their armada arrived at the edge of human space, something happened Velarin hadn't expected. The Alliance fleet was waiting. 800 ships, human and alien, refugee and volunteer, freighters turned warships, patrol craft turned defenders, vessels infused with alien technologies that defied every rule of physics. Whisperers linked minds across light years, coordinating fleets with impossible precision. Kron drilled tunnels through asteroids, hiding ships until they struck like hammers. Nethys surged through enemy systems, shorting entire cruisers in seconds. Umbriel cloaked strike groups until they emerged like ghosts. The battle raged for 12 hours. When it ended, half the Council fleet was destroyed or disabled. Entire squadrons mutinied, refusing to fire. Velarin's flagship found itself surrounded by dozens of Alliance ships, their weapons trained. Jake's voice came across the comms, calm but iron-hard. This is your last chance. Surrender. The galaxy doesn't belong to tyrants anymore. Velarin's silver face twisted. Without control, everything falls apart. Jake's reply was steady. Without freedom, everything dies. The silver-skinned ambassador's image flickered once more. Then he surrendered. The war was over. 3 months later, the Galactic Assembly met for the first time on New Haven Station, what Kepler 442b had become. The chamber was vast, built to hold hundreds of species. Stone beings sat beside energy forms. Shadows whispered beside pacifists. Humans walked among them all. Jake opened the assembly with simple words. For 1,000 years, the Council told us difference was danger. They told us anomalies must be erased. But we are proof they were wrong. Difference is strength. Compassion is power. Together we are something new. Together we are the future. The chamber erupted with voices. Voices once silenced, now free. That night, Jake walked through New Haven Station, past children playing games that had never existed before. A Zephyrian child floated toys with a Valar crystal shard while a human boy laughed. Umbriel shadows curled around them like protective blankets. Granite approached, his ember eyes soft. You let us here, he rumbled. Jake shook his head. No, we let each other. He stopped before a memorial carved into the canyon wall. Names glowed softly in crystal light. At the top were two, Kale and Nara. Jake touched the stone, his voice barely a whisper. You showed us what we could be. Above him, ships from a dozen species came and went from New Haven, carrying hope to a galaxy that had once been afraid of difference. The old order was gone. What came next would be chaotic, difficult, dangerous.